Well, great. Well, hello, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to me talk about Power BI. And by now, I'm sure that many of you have seen and used many of the features in Power BI, but the poll that Tammy put up shows how many of you have used the part in Excel versus out of Excel. So I figured that since a lot of people are not so familiar with the features outside of Excel, that today I'd take time to go ahead and explain some of those to you. So hopefully you have had some of the chance to listen to several of the previous talks that we've given here at Pragmatic Works about Power BI. But today's focus is going to be different because I was trying not to duplicate stuff that everyone else had already done. And it was prompted in a large part through the conversation that I had with a friend of mine about Power BI and Excel. And we were talking about tabular models, and then we started talking about Excel and the differences between Excel and Power BI. And my friend asked the same question I've heard a number of different times. And, you know, I knew I was going to be giving this talk, and it sort of stuck with me. His question was, well, what's the difference between Excel and Power BI? And what would I ever want Power BI for? Can I do everything in Excel? Well, I think that's a lot of people have been asking the same question. And I think it comes down to there's just more than one way to accomplish a task. I mean, do you have to use your phone to talk to someone? No, you can always text them. Do you have to use a hammer if you have a nail? No, you can use a rock if you care more about getting a nail in the wall than you do your fingers. I can tell you from experience that a heel of a cowboy boot will really work well in a pinch too. Similarly, can you do data analytics in Excel? Absolutely. Go look on Amazon, and there's a couple of books by this guy named Conrad Karlberg that tells you all about analytics in Excel, and he goes to some serious statistical modeling there too. And as far as distributing data, well, SharePoint can distribute Excel reports, and come down to it, so can email if you're not talking about too much data. But back to my cowboy boot with a nail analogy. I think I can show you why you'd want to use Power BI instead of just doing everything in Excel. So in today's conversation, I hope to answer the question as to why you'd want to use the features within Power BI instead of just in Excel. And since I only have an hour, there's no way that I can show you everything with Power BI versus Excel, but hopefully some of the things that I can show you today will give you an idea of some things you may not have seen yet if you've only played around with the Power BI features in Excel. So what's so different about Power BI? Well, when talking about it, everyone talks about the four powers: Power Query, Power View, Power Pivot, and Power Map. My favorite of these has got to be Power Query. I use it all the time to gather data off the web. Power View was originally released as part of SQL Server 2012, and I think it was Microsoft's real foray into self-service BI. With the advent of Excel 2013, Power View was released from being a SharePoint-only application and rolled into Excel so that the features that were developed for SQL Server could be more widely distributed. Power Pivot, the grand dragon of all of the powers, because Microsoft has been using that since, I believe, 1997. It's gone through a lot of different iterations, but there are people who live and die by doing things in Power Pivot, and it was through the use of all of the Power Pivot users and what they did with the data that made Microsoft really start looking at adding features into Excel to extend it. So currently Excel also has Power Map. There's a little bit of a story about that, though. When Power Map is available in a preview version only, which is what I had the little star there for, when Power BI was originally previewed in 2013, that Power Map was going to be only a Power BI feature. I do have a blog post about this as well at desertisleSQL.com, but what happened was they got so many people mad when they said that in January of last year that when they released Power BI that Power Map would be going away, that in April they decided, well, let's just not make the whole world mad at us. So what they did is they allowed the use of the preview edition to continue. The preview edition is exactly the version that was released with the product, but there's been a lot of enhancements and changes to that, and you may have seen them. One of the real big ones was the ability to do a heat map. I did some work for a client, happened to be a casino, and they really wanted an interior heat map so that they could see if there were any dealers where always the house was paying out a lot of money, or if there were slot machines that always had more traffic. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do with Power Map if you have a Power BI tenant, because the version that comes with Excel won't do that. It doesn't have that feature. They also added sound. I'm not saying that you can't do maps. A lot of the features in Power Map people actually don't want to do, because it's more about playing a movie than doing a drill down. And if you want to do drill down with maps, you can definitely do that within Power View. So again, you may or may not decide that you really need it. But Microsoft decided to create a separate application for Power BI. Well, what did they do that for? Well, one of the big things that they showed was the desire to have information available on multiple platforms. For those of you familiar with what Microsoft originally tried to do, they tried to promote a product called Silverlight. And Silverlight was supposed to be the way that people used data out on mobile devices. Well, for those of you wondering what happened to it, nobody wanted it. Nobody cared. Nobody wrote anything for it. So Microsoft went the way of the industry, and they started releasing or having things be available for release in HTML5. And HTML5 is the de facto standard for displaying information on tablets and phones. In December, Microsoft also came out and released a iPhone-compatible version of their browser, so that you can look at Power BI maps on an iPhone now, which you were unable to do until December of last year. The other thing that Microsoft is doing with Power BI is they're putting in the new cool stuff that people are talking about, and that definitely includes predictive analytics and forecasting. This is a feature, coincidentally, it's only available in HTML5, so it is not available at all in Excel, and they're not planning on including it in Excel. Another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, I didn't put it as a bullet point, but it is another difference, is Power Query allows you to get information off the web, but you can't refresh it. But if you have that in Power BI, you can. I recently was reading a web page for somebody that was saying that because you couldn't refresh Power Query, he didn't think it was enterprise ready. Well, that's because Microsoft wants you to refresh Power Query by using Power BI. Then the last thing that Microsoft did that is for Power BI to kind of differentiate it from Excel is they created on December 18th a designer dashboard creator. Sometimes this is called Power BI Designer, sometimes it's called Dashboard. I think Designer is a much better name, because if anybody has ever looked at any of the demos, you can see that you've been able to do dashboards with Power View for a long time. So it's not dashboarding that's new. It's the fact you're using a different tool completely and totally separate from Excel to make that happen. So I know that I've been talking for a little while, but I wanted to make sure you were interested before I bored you with the dull stuff. My name is Ginger Grant. I tweet at Desert Isle SQL. I wanted to make sure that I gave you my contact information, so you might be able to reach out to me later if you have any questions. I do admit to hanging out a lot on Twitter, so if you choose to tweet me something, I'll definitely be responding. I've got a number of blog posts about Power BI and other SQL-related topics on my blog, and I post upcoming engagements up there as well. I'm pretty active in the community. Next time I'm speaking will be at SQL Saturday in Albuquerque in this February, and then there I'm going to be talking about SSIS, but I mix it up. I also am going to be putting a post regarding this webinar on the website, so if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer or questions that I did answer, I'm going to be putting them up on my blog later on. So I might want to check that back a few days ago. I am a BI consultant here at Pragmatic Works, and I've listed my email if you feel free want to contact me that way. So now I have all of those pesky logistics out of the way. Let's get back to Power BI. So everything in the cloud is in the press so often it's practically cliche. so I felt compelled to include a Dilbert cartoon about it. The differentiating feature about Power BI is that it is cloud-based. That's why it's not Excel. And there's no way I couldn't mention that. So Microsoft has ways of distributing reports in tablets and Apple, and that's, so there's an app for both. And also, as I mentioned, the data refresh capabilities for Power BI web sources. What Microsoft is doing with the cloud is they're basically deciding to release whenever they feel like it, so it allows them to put more information out and be more creative than they would be if they had to do installs all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, if you wanted to load up an app to see your Power BI things, how you would do that. Here's the website where they basically have a video about it. Unfortunately, I have it on my phone, but that doesn't do you any good since we're all staring at my screen. But they have it loaded here on a tablet. To get the Windows app, it's in the apps at microsoftstore.com, and it's a free app. And you can see, that you can look at all of your reports on your home page, and it looks very similar to what you would see when you are here. And for those of you that haven't seen this before, this is the web landing page for Power BI, and what it shows you is it's customized. This is my faux team site. I'm a team of one, kind of like the Army. This is the dashboards that you can create, which is why, if you want to go ahead and take a look at these here real quick. It's for this reason that I don't think it's fair to say that dashboarding is new to Power BI, because obviously this stuff isn't new. This little icon in the corner is the rendering in HTML5. When Power BI was originally released, this wasn't really quite ready. And so a lot of times when you went to display something in HTML5, which is what this icon does, it says, I don't know if you can read the text, but try the new HTML5 version. When you clicked on that, it said, oh, sorry, couldn't render. But Microsoft has come a long way since they first released it, and now pretty much everything renders. So this would show you exactly the same thing you would see if you had downloaded their app on their phone. Unfortunately, that's not the world's easiest, best thing to demo when I'm on a laptop, but you all get the idea. So the next thing that I really wanted to talk about was predictive analytics. And everybody throws a term around, but I thought it might be useful to explain some of the science behind it. An understanding of the way that technology works is necessary to understand the way and the manner in which the methods are applied to gain predictive analytics, and knowing more about it will help you pick the most appropriate method in your data. So the first step in predictive analytics is to determine the appropriate set of predicators. Statisticians decided not to call them variables, which is what they really are. For example, at Amazon, the set of predictors is the items that you've looked at and the items you've actually decided to purchase. And this set of predictors is compared to millions of other people and what they looked at and bought, and probably a few more variables like your credit card information, and demographics, region, age, and things like that added in there. And that's the kind of information that, say, Amazon is using to come up with that list at the bottom of the screen to show you what you might else want to buy. That isn't random chance, although some of it does seem rather random, but it's things that they believe that you will be interested in based on what you're looking at, have looked at, or have purchased. You can see this is really a hot topic in the industry, because what everybody is trying to do is figure out how to drive sales, how to drive habits, and they do this by analyzing a bunch of different predictors. And how they determine how all this works is by selecting the ones that are actually relevant. For example, I bought a whole bunch of stuff on Amazon for my niece, who is 3. It's not Christmas anymore, so the fact that I bought a American Girl doll dress isn't going to be very helpful for them in the future. They figure stuff like that out. I tend to see stuff that's for children specifically around Christmas, because they figured out, me and a lot of other people, that's when we tend to do a lot of buying for kids. So it's pretty a good driver, and I will say that it works because I do click on some of the stuff that they put on the bottom of the screen. Target uses rankings and predictions like this too. You may have heard of this back in 2012. There was a big story in the press about it. So Target analyzes purchases made by shoppers, and it determines if they're female. And using all of the data that they gather about people who shop at Target, anything they can get off their credit card, region, items purchased, they can figure out if a woman is pregnant. They decided that it would be less creepy to say, congratulations on the new baby, and instead they started sending out coupons for things like baby clothes and diapers and things that expectant mothers might want. Well, one father saw these coupons that his daughter got in the mail, and he was not happy. He marched into the local Target store in Minneapolis demanding why they would be sending such inappropriate coupons to his high school daughter. And the store manager, he had no clue that Target was using predictive analytics in this way, and he felt really bad. So not only did he apologize to the man in the store, he felt bad enough to call him a few days later. Well, when he called the man a few days later, he wasn't as angry as he was before. Turns out he had a talk with his daughter, and guess what? Target was right. Target knew that his daughter was pregnant before he did. And after getting the coupons, he had a talk with his daughter, and he found out Target was right. This was a pretty big news story because it's kind of creepy, and because it just shows you the what you can determine from predictive analytics data. Target has decided not to discuss the model, but Andrew Pohl, the data scientist who Target hired to develop it, has talked all about it, and he gave interviews in the New York Times. But he's talking about vague generalities because he's not telling you how he ranked the predictors, and he's not telling you the list of predictors, except in vague terms like items purchased, that they looked at to determine that. But Target is among the industry leaders in trying to target coupons and other online methods for driving people to purchase certain things because they gather all sorts of information about people. One of the other things that they're able to gather, by the way, is if you have ever purchased anything online, generally speaking, there's a MAC number of your PC IP correlation so that they can get information about your IP address, your MAC address, and things that are purchased on your computer that are aggregated in the main, and they get that from your ISP. So there's just a plethora of things you can find out from that, which is why there's a big market of people who try to try to hide their MAC number to make it harder for people to do. But when all these, because to be honest, predictive analytics is a really neat science, but with as far as they can go right now, it's kind of creepy. But there's so much data. There's just no way that any one spreadsheet or person could analyze it all. It's basically combining giant sets of data. Wait, sets of data. That's what databases are good for, right? Absolutely. A lot of the big data stuff analyzes the same sort of stuff. Thinking about that, I know that people are always talking about, at least in the SQL Server community, about how important a science predictive analytics would be, the same way that they would talk about the importance of the science of SQL Server. Well, in SQL Server community, they tend to measure a lot of the importance of the application and the user base based on attendee and conventions. Well, if you look at predictive analytics, it's amazing. Those two graphics I have there are not necessarily random. They are two of the biggest conferences that predictive analytics holds every year, and these are held multiple times, different locations, worldwide, because there is such a big demand not only to learn more about predictive analytics, but to learn what the latest and greatest ways that people are doing to gather data, ranking the predictors, and combining predictors into a model. So it's a really interesting topic, and Microsoft, of course, is, wants to be a part of it. So a lot of the predictive analytics is selecting the right model. There are some things that you can do based on just more definitive things than everything possible you've ever bought. The goal in selecting the right model is knowing what to measure. People in broadcasting call this decreasing the signal-to-noise ratio. The principle is the same with broadcasting if for anything else. You want to see all the data, and you want to drill down to get the important information, which is likely to make a difference. And in data science, they call this the data reduction principle. And one of the ways they do this may be familiar for anybody who's ever been graded on a bell curve. When I was in college, I took a computer structures and design class from a teacher who'd never taught before, and it was obvious. To say that he wasn't a good instructor would be a massive understatement. Everybody did terrible on his tests, all of his tests, except for this one guy, Steve. Steve had been working in the industry for over 10 years, unlike the rest of us, which pretty much, just graduated from high school and wandered over to the local university. Steve had been working there for 10 years, and he decided to get a degree because his employer was paying for it. He knew everything in this class. He was just taking it because there was no way for him to test out of it, and it was a prerequisite to get into upper division. So he got 100% on almost all the exams we had in this class, and the next highest grade was in the low 70s. Now, just because the instructor was new, I'm not implying that he was stupid. He wasn't. He knew that if he gave one A, no Bs, a few Cs, and everything else were Ds and Fs, the dean and the department head would likely question his teaching methods, like the rest of us did. And we'd probably all go there and complain about our grades and how horrible he was. Well, he didn't want that. So instead, he applied a reduction principle that kept the rest of us going to the department head and dean and complaining. What did he do? He threw out Steve's tests. And that way, he graded on a curve so that the 97% that Steve got was thrown out, and the next highest grade is 72. That was considered an A, and then 10 points below that would be a B, so forth and so on. Same reduction principle that's used in predictive analytics, because you want to get rid of the outliers. Something that's just like one extreme, one way or the other, something really, really high and really, really low, that doesn't tell you much about the data. It's outside of the norm. And to do a predictive modeling, hey, it's just a guess. And to do the best guess you can, you eliminate your extremes. So throw out the high, throw out the low, and then do a weighted average. And again, that's the sort of a symbol of another way of explaining that would be to use Occam's razor. I've got one way of saying it here. It's been quoted many different times, but when you have competing theories that make exactly the same prediction, choose a simpler one. And that's kind of hard when we're talking about very complicated sets of data. But the idea being is if you have data that you can eliminate to decrease the level of complexity and get a more normalized average of data, do it. It's kind of the same thing with programming. I mean, if you are working on a database solution, you want to work on developing things that will work, 95% of the time. And for those 5%, well, you'll focus on them when you get the 95% done. At least I hope that's how you're doing your development. So I know that you've probably seen the response that past performance is no guarantee of future results. Well, when analyzing data, a lot of times there is a time factor involved. And when there is a time factor involved, this may mean that you can track repeating trends. Well, that means that the infamous quote, past performance is no guarantee of future result, which I think must be required on every investment thing that ever is sold, isn't really true. Here's a dirty little secret. You can look at past performance, and some models, it will predict the future response. For example, I can predict that every November the sale of turkeys will increase. I can predict that the second week or so of February, the lines at C's candy store are going to stretch out the door. Why? Obviously, I'm not a psychic. I work for a living. If I really was a psychic, I would look at my crystal ball on the Powerball numbers next time they hit over 100 million and be on my own uncharted desert island without being shipwrecked. I never understood why anybody would call a psychic, because if they're any good, why would they be working? They would be on their own, fabulous vacation life. But I digress. Identifying seasonal variations, that means that you can identify things that are repeating trends over time. Holidays are a perfect example. And there are other business trends that you may be able to identify that you can determine, that their KPIs are not necessarily fixed measurements. Your KPIs should actually vary based on time of year. I worked for a concrete company for a while, and their KPIs for daily performance always went into the tank every time it rained. Why? Well, nobody pours concrete when it rains. Things like this are what your model needs to evaluate. You need to be able to throw out outliers like, hey, it rained last Thursday, that's why nobody bought any concrete, in order to make your model more valid. So Microsoft has used the technique of selecting the appropriate things over time in the model that they have for predictive analytics and Power BI. They determine how long the measurable trends are and then predict the movement of the data going forward. So once you select the time frame, the statistical model of using it is using exponential moving averages, which is one of the standard models that was developed in the 50s actually for analyzing data. Forecasting provides a way to fine-tune your model for things that have changeable dates. For example, if you run a telemarketing company, which also happens to employ a few developers in the same building, and you know that there were several times last year in the month of January that the building was evacuated during the day, which meant that telemarketing sales decreased significantly. Well, if you know that that was only the reason that the productivity was down was not for anything except for the fact that we had to go outside for a couple of stupid fire drills because people were smoking next to the sensors in the parking garage, you know that that's probably not a trend that's going to occur going forward because they hired a security guard and told some people if they did it again they were fired. It's silly things like this, but knowing that you can ignore some parts of the past are very important in ensuring that your model is correct. You know that you need to fix the data to throw these things out, and you can build that change into the forecasting model that Microsoft provides. One of the things that this is called is sort of the artillery practice method of targeting results. So based on the identifiable trends, you can start making predictions, kind of like how archers do when shooting arrows. And your target, of course, is the bullseye, the correct data. You make a prediction on how data will be in the future, and then you wait to see how right you are. If you're a little high or a little low, you adjust your aim or your predicators and to determine how you can fix your models so that it can be more correct going forward. And to validate how accurate your forecasting model is, Power BI includes Hindcasting. And Hindcasting lets you evaluate your predictions by showing you how they track against the past. And I'll show you a bit what it looks like in a few minutes. One thing that I wanted to put up is why I'm not showing this live, which I really planned on doing. Unfortunately, the application isn't on Power BI right now. Microsoft originally released forecasting at the past BA convention on May 8th. This is one of the beauties of the cloud. Microsoft can release things whenever they want. And I did put together a blog post this year with a timeline so you can see some of the significant releases that they did make just seemingly at random or when there's a major convention. But here we're seeing the dark side, or going with the cloud meme, the Nimbus clouds of cloud development, you know, the dark clouds that bring rain. Anyway, I included this link, and in case the link goes away, a picture of the screen. And as you can read here, there was some kind of stability issue. I will say that I never encountered it. With the forecasting, so it's not live right now. You'll also notice that this was posted on December 10th, and although I have inquired, I was sort of anticipating that it would be available by now, and unfortunately it's not, which is why I have to go with screen prints. But of course this is going to be up again. It was in the past, so I still think it's an important feature that's definitely worth talking about. So what does forecasting do? Well, here's a forecasting dashboard. Again, dashboards outside of the new release of the Power BI Designer. These are in Power View. And for forecasting, you can see that it works on line trends. You can see here that the forecasting is available. If you wish to use forecasting, you can only use a line chart with a single line. It also doesn't work, say, if you have like the ability to select like multiple countries, but you only select one. That doesn't work. It's got to be something where you only have one line that's available. The other thing that's important is the x-axis here. It needs to have a date-time format or be a uniformly increasing whole number. You can't put 2013 unless it's recognized as a year, or it's recognized as a whole number. These happen to be actual dates. So if you need to have your data formatted like this in order for this to work. But if you look at this trend, you can see this is forecasting birth trends in the world, and you can see that there seems to be a repeatable pattern. If this was blown up, we could see that there are certain months, obviously, where it seems like a lot more kids are being born. And you can probably establish this pattern over time, especially if you look at the trends and go forward and backwards. Now, this was done in 2012, which is why this is all grayed out. These are predictions. So what you can do with forecasting is what you do is you take this line here represents a discrete range that you're going to evaluate. So you take this range and pull it forward for the same range. So for example, this is a little over a year and this is a little over a year. So you extend the time into the future to see what the trend is going to be. You can also add seasonality. Auto, none. Seasonality is a big thing. I know that people don't think about it, but pretty much every number that's released in terms of economic figures have a seasonality component to them. So it's something that is regularly recognized in numbers like unemployment, the economy, and things that you may not even think about, but they are all adjusted for seasonality, and you can do that as well. And then you can show the standard deviation. Do you think it's going to go a little up, a little down, just based on your analysis of what's going on in the business? And you can do that. The other thing that you'll notice is this is in HTML5. It doesn't work in the straight web version. You need to go to the HTML5 version to make this work. For the fact that this is an HTML5 version means that not only will it work on your tablet, but it'll also work on the web. And so this interactivity is available if you have the app as well. So zooming in a little bit on the forecast, I wanted to show a little easier for you to be able to see it. You can see the range and deviation. And in order to check to see how accurate your model is, you can drag it into the past and see how it applies to the past. So you can do model validation. Now, again, the only true science is looking at the past and analyzing it, but you can use the past to kind of indicate to you what to expect in the future. And this is probably much more accurate than just straight up KPIs that you're running every day. So ways you can improve your forecast that I talked before is, let's say, for example, that this would represent, say, when all of your telemarketers are standing outside in the rain because somebody smoked right next to the smoke detector. You can fix that. You can do what-if analysis. You can change some of your variables, and you do that by moving the data points. And if you do that, you're not changing the data. The data is still the same, but what you are changing is the way that you visually are able to interact with it. So you can see what moving things up and down due to the entire cycle and if it's impacted. It's a really cool feature, and unfortunately I wish I was able to demo it live, but I'm sure Microsoft's working on it. So everybody uses Excel. According to Microsoft, it has over 1 billion users. It's the largest single data store in the world. And I know that sounds really strange, but you know, my mom uses Excel. She has me take her pictures off her camera, but she stores things in Excel because that's where she's used to storing data. That's where everybody stores data. And in corporate environment, why would you stop using Excel? Well, I got a couple of reasons. One of the reasons might be versions. I've worked in environments where, you know, hey, we're not upgrading everybody to 2013 or even to 2010, so you have different people with different versions of Excel and things work differently. I will tell you that if you are using Power Pivot, it is greatly different from 2007 to 2010 with the latest upgrades, or 2013. And the other thing too, in order to use the features of Power BI for 2010, you have to make sure that you have the service patches correctly installed. Well, I don't know about you, but my ability to move the LAN administrators on the release schedule is somewhere close to 0. And that's similar in a lot of companies. I mean, they have their setups the way that works best for them, and it's very difficult sometimes to get the version of Excel that you need that contains the features that you want. The other big problem is hardware. When you start doing a lot of Power BI work, you are loading a lot of data into your local PC and then doing analysis on it. You're building data models in Power Pivot, and it's great with a VertiPack that you can put a whole bunch of data into memory. But let's face it, that really works when you're running a 64 OS and you got at least 8 gig. Well, that's generally not the corporate standard for people outside of the development world. Most places that and clients that I go to generally are running a 32-bit OS, sometimes running 64, and their desktops generally have 4 gig of RAM. This is a problem, and this is a problem that you run into with Excel, because while I could do some really cool things with it, I'm running a 64 OS and I've got 16 gigs of RAM. There's a lot of stuff I can do, and I'm not waiting for it. That's not true with the user base, and that's a problem when you're having them doing self-service analytics on their desktop. So one of the ways that Microsoft is looking at how to get around these obstacles and yet still use Excel is to put it on the web. And the other big thing is security. Now, I know this isn't really talked about that much considering with Power BI, but if you load the entire company's data into an Excel spreadsheet that you're manipulating, you have a lot of information available that you could just walk out the door with and hand off to a competitor. And that's a concern. And if you're running a lot of stuff in Excel and you can put a lot of data in Excel, that's a big concern, which is one of the reasons that they're looking to do it more and more stuff on the web. The last reason, which I didn't put up here, but is something I know Microsoft is thinking of, is Tableau. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Tableau, but Tableau is the latest and greatest neato reporting thing that everybody wants because it has awesome visualizations. Tableau originated by a DARPA grant at Stanford to improve data visualization for government analysts. They're getting a lot of satellite intelligence information. People might know who they're doing that for. And all of this data was coming in, and they needed a better way to analyze it. Well, the way that they were able to analyze it better is by having Tableau create new and unique data visualizations that would help them identify what they needed to focus on. Tableau took that, and they kept all of their PhD visualization experts, and they are really giving Microsoft headaches in terms of visualization of data, because once people see Tableau, that's what they want because it's really pretty. There's some issues with it that I won't go into, but Microsoft is looking at them, and that's why they're looking at Power BI in the web specifically, because that's what Tableau does. So moving on to the latest and greatest feature of Power BI is the Designer. It was released December 18th, 2014, and it's only available in the US, and it's a preview, which means it's not fully integrated. Data sources for it can be in site or in the cloud, and it allows you to do visualizations without Excel. And this is a big thing because not everybody has Excel, not everybody is always able to use it, based on what I was saying about versions being a really big issue. And so Microsoft has developed this tool so that you don't even have to have Excel. They also made it easier. It does a lot of the suggestions for visualization for you, and then you can change it if you don't like it. Again, sometimes they call this Power BI dashboard, but that's kind of a silly name because we've seen dashboards, and you'll see here they call it dashboard preview, other places they call it Designer, so I don't think they've made up their mind on exactly what the name is. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Going back to the Power BI tenant, we're going to go ahead and try it now. The first time you go into it, when it says learn more, it takes a long time because it loads a giant app into your SharePoint premise. So the first time it is really, really pokey. But this is the sample that's of a dashboard that's created solely with Designer. And what this does is it takes any data source that you want and offers you the ability to create various visualizations for it and interact with it. Now, you'll notice that I said that it didn't have to use Excel, and you might say, but you've got a Excel spreadsheet up there. I do, because that's my data set. So what I did is I have just a straight up Excel spreadsheet that I used to be a data source for a dashboard which I created containing the information on spreadsheet. And basically this is really simple. All I did was take products sold, sales by period, and just loaded up from Excel, and it suggested various visualizations for me, and I changed them up a little bit, but not much. This is something that anybody can do in about 10 minutes and what shows up here is everything that you decide to click, and you paste it on your dashboard, and that's how it gets there. So this is like the simple version that you can do in 5 minutes, and this is a really cool, neato version that Microsoft put together with all the visualizations that are possible, including bubble charts and maps, and I can go ahead and zoom into it. And it shows you a more detailed version of the information. And you can also go ahead and edit the report. And you can see that these are the fields, so you can go ahead and change the filters. Right now it says all chains, so let's go ahead and change this up a little bit. And let's just pick Akron. And you can see the data instantly changed. So this information would be available to anybody, not just to the person who created it, but anybody you want to be able to interact with it in real time using data that they gather from anywhere. This could either be sourced from an on-premise data solution that you've created a secure store to, or like I did, you could load up an Excel spreadsheet and say, hey, this is my data model. And it works a lot like Power View. And the reason that it's not so much like Excel is they did take a lot of the more complicated features and functions within Excel out of it, because that's really not what this is designed to do. This is designed to be basically Power View Lite. And but this kind of analysis, I believe, is a first step, because you'll notice that this is totally separate from all the rest of the Power BI website, and the features on it were somewhat limited. But you can go ahead and save this report, save a copy, and all of this will be stored in the public preview. I'm not going to save these, which means that all of them will live in here, which is separate from the team site where everything else is presently loaded. So it's something that they're definitely going to be, doing more enhancements in the future to. This just came out on the 18th, but it shows you the direction that they're going, where they're all going to be having visualizations that are completely outside of Excel. So in summary, today we talked about some of the features of Power BI which are not on the web, and specifically mobile distribution and predictive analysis. We looked at why you might want to use Power BI by looking at the future direction of the product, which is moving away from Excel through the release of Power BI or dashboarding. I wanted to definitely leave some time for questions today, and I've included some links on the screen where you might find more information on Power BI. And one thing I definitely want to highlight is the link for free training, because next month Devin is going to be giving a detailed presentation on how to use the Power BI Designer tool. So if you want to see a whole lot more than what I've shown here, you might be interested in signing up for that. Tammy, does anybody have any questions?
I believe we do have a couple of questions for you. Does Power BI have Power Map feature?
Yes, it does. It has the Power BI Online has the ability to use the entire features within Power Map, but it's displayed as an MP4. So while you would do all of the work in Excel, what you get with Power BI is the latest and greatest, COM add-in. and then you would develop it in Excel and then upload it to Power BI as a movie.
Okay, and does this replace DMX through SSAS? Also, how does R play here?
I think you got cut off, but I can answer this. Does this replace DMX? Is no. I think that they are going to be designed to work together. What Power BI is really designed for is designed for self-service BI. So somebody's got to put the model together. Somebody else has got to create the DMX so that it can be, for calculated columns or aggregations so that it can be more readily consumed, because the goal of this is to make it easy for end users. The data models still have to work. They still have to be correctly created, gathered, etc., or you can't put a pretty picture on top of it. A friend of mine used to call that lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. You're not going to make it pretty if it's underlyingly just not that attractive.
I believe the second part of that was, how does R play here?
R is obviously the analysis tool, which again allows you for an in-depth analysis of your data, loading it into memory. It's definitely something that is getting to be more and more popular for interactivity. That is something that is going to stay in the realm of the data developer and designer and stay within the tabular / SSAS world and not move into Power BI, because again, that's not really its focus. Its focus is to make things easy, and R isn't.
Okay. In Power BI design, will the charts have the capability to manipulate the colors?
This is kind of one of those things that drives people nuts. I don't know how many people have run into this with customers in Power BI, but they have sets of colors that they have selected, and they think they're great. And so if you want one of those sets of colors, you can use them like that. But if you have different tastes than Microsoft's and you want to combine colors that they didn't want you to combine, you're out of luck. Which just seems strange to me. You can't pick all of your own colors, but you get to pick sets of colors, which is just what you do with Power BI, which just seems odd.
Okay. Designer dashboard changes specific to each user?
The security for it is not been nailed down by Microsoft. I assume that they are going to be releasing more information about it. I know you can make it read-only, and they said that they will be providing it. But as far as the actual difference for interactivity between sets of users, I don't think that's been clearly defined.
Okay. Will this replace the BI feature offered in SharePoint on the cloud?
This is sort of SharePoint on the cloud, because this is actually, if you look at how you configure the tenant, it is actually SharePoint on the cloud. It's kind of a subset for it. You do have to have, it is SharePoint on the cloud is required for this to work. So I think they're just going to be more joined in the future than they are now, because now it looks like it's totally separate, and I think that's going to be changing.
Okay.
But then again, that's future direction for Microsoft, so we'll be seeing.
All right. Can I grant access to users outside of our domain?
I'm going to have to get back with you on that. I believe there is a way of doing it, but I don't want to say anything off the cuff until I've researched it, because I've not had to do that. So that's a good question, and I'll have an answer for you on my blog post. How's that?
All right. Is the Power Pivot model the underpinnings here?
Underpinnings here for the designer? It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
And neither does it for any of the visualizations, because you can use any data source you want. You can pull stuff from Wikipedia and call it a data source.
Okay. If we want to start learning Power BI, where do we start?
Well, I've got some links for you. These are the links that I put up because I think that they're the most useful. Obviously, blogs.mstn.com/b Power BI. That's Microsoft's official blog where they have everything. The two Italians, as they're commonly known, Marco Russo and Alberto Freire, they do SQL BI. They are the leaders in DAX. All the books I've ever read on DAX pretty much either homage to those two guys, and they have a lot of great information on their site, not only about Power BI, but its interaction with Excel and DAX. Chris Webby, he's got a lot of stuff. Again, he has a similar background in DAX. He's also co-written books with the guys from SQL BI, and he writes quite a bit on his blog site as well. And Devin, so does Devin, and of course, we do offer various classes on it.
Okay, SharePoint on premise support Power BI Designer.
This is something that really makes a lot of people mad, but Microsoft right now is stating, I actually heard them say this, if you want to hear the quote yourself, there is a Microsoft Virtual Academy class on Power BI from when it was first released. And somebody asked specifically, well, I already have SharePoint on premises. Why should I have to buy it in the cloud to get Power BI? And the response was from Microsoft in February of last year is, we have no plans to provide any Power BI functionality on SharePoint on premises. So that's a direct quote from Microsoft, and I know a lot of people aren't happy about that, but that's what I heard in February from them. And if you want to go to Microsoft Virtual Academy, the Power BI class, you can hear the same thing.
Okay. How Power BI can predicting, and then a follow-up question is, use data mining?
Data mining is not the same underlying technology that's used in Power BI in the predictive analytics portion. They use a exponent, smooth exponent method, which is just a different statistical model that was developed because it has a time reference involved, while data mining is not as linear in its analysis. So what I expect to happen with Power BI is they're going to be, and I've kind of seen stuff that would lead me to believe that this is the case. If you look at machine learning, which is Microsoft's Azure product, they have a number of different statistical models that they can do analysis on data on. Since that is already a pattern that they have with machine learning, I wouldn't be at all surprised if a similar pattern wasn't available eventually in Power BI. Now, I don't know this to be a fact, but since they're already doing that with one product, it's logical to assume that they would start allowing you to apply different models on this one as well.
Okay, and is it preferred?
I don't understand the question.
I believe that was a follow-up to a question before we had, is the Power Pivot model the underpinnings here? And then I guess his follow-up question was, is it preferred?
Well, I think that the model that you use has to do with how your data is. For example, one of the reasons that they went with Power Query is the goal is that you are going to have data that's coming from multiple sources. Microsoft fully expects that you are going to be pulling data from someplace other than your traditional data stores within your application. Now, do you have to put them into Power Pivot? You can. You can also create an OData feed with Power BI and query them directly. So I don't think it's necessarily preferred. I think the goal is to provide you the ability to access all the data that you have, wherever it happens to be, using a number of different methods so that you can select the one that works best in your environment.
Okay. Does this work in Office 365 SharePoint?
It is part of Office 365, but if you want Power BI, you have to pay additional for it. I have the licensing information on my blog. It depends on what version of Office 365 you have, but the additional price for Power BI is on a per user basis, starting at $20 per user, and that's what it costs if you have Office 365 SharePoint already.
Will available in next version of SharePoint, if not in SharePoint 2013?
Like I said, since I know, based on what I heard from Microsoft in February of last year, they're not planning on including any of this into the SharePoint on-premises product. Now, since I heard that quote on February of last year, they may have changed their minds, but I doubt it.
All right. How would you determine anomalies or freak instances in data versus true trends or two trends?
It's not always easy to do. That's why, you know, there is a lot of prediction in predictive analytics. You can only, I mean, for example, nobody predicted 9/11, and that sure impacted business. I mean, there are things that you just cannot predict, and it's, you know, wholly arrogant to think that your model is perfect. Nobody's models are perfect. You can do as well as you can to, say, exclude things like on a Z-curve. You exclude the outliers, anything that is, you know, a greater than a certain deviation off norm, which is what forecasting does. But in terms of identifying all the outliers, well, that's kind of like a golf game where you only, you know, hit the ball 18 times. It's a goal, but nobody does it.